What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can find me on Twitter at NJ8287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes and articles. And, of course, check out the podcast, subscribe, check out any more episodes on your preferred podcast platform. Fantastic show for you guys today. I get to tackle a topic that we've wanted to really go after for a while, looking at the relationship between college athletics and the university side. The guest on today's show is Blake Zimmerman. He is the Director of Social and Emerging Strategy at Texas Tech University. And he came right over from the athletics side, is now working for the university side, so he can offer just some tremendous perspective. And you're really going to learn a lot from this conversation, whether you work in pro sports, in college sports, or any industry really, about maximizing your opportunities, collaborating across departments, and really being all on the same page and aligned with your goals, aligned with your brand. Just tremendous stuff. Stick around for the chat with Blake. But first, this episode's helpful tool. And this episode's helpful tool is definitely, almost certainly one you've heard before, but I was surprised recently in the past couple weeks when someone I knew did not have this tool on their computer, and they did, write copy quite a bit, and that is Grammarly. It's the Grammarly plugin, the Grammarly app. You can find it on any, pretty easily. Just Google Grammarly, you'll find the extension or whatever app you want to use, and it is just a magic tool that follows you around everywhere you go as you type things and lets you know if there is a mistake. Now, it will point out mistakes, like underlining things that may not be mistakes, whether it doesn't understand the word or it doesn't agree with the with how you're describing or how you're making the sentence. But it's going to really save you a lot of errors, whether it's spelling errors or, yes, grammar errors. It is called Grammarly, and just an indispensable tool. It's free. It is freemium. There are premium options, but the free one is more than enough. So if you somehow don't have Grammarly on your computer yet, get it now. That's Steps' helpful tool, as simple as it comes. But if you don't have it, you definitely should have it. But stick around, because we're going to get into much deeper knowledge and insight in this chat with Blake Zimmerman of Texas Tech University. Back with today's guest, and I'm so psyched to talk to him. This has been a long time coming. We've already been chatting a bit offline, so I know this is going to be an awesome interview. The bar is raised high for you. Welcome to the podcast today, Blake Zimmerman, Director of Social Emerging Strategy for Texas Tech University.
Thanks so much for having me, Neil. I'm really excited too, man. This has been a long time coming.
Like, this is an area that I mean, when I reached out to and just talking to you in general over the months, it's really a cool, interesting discussion for us to have, because you have been on both sides of the campus, so to speak. The athletic side and now on the university side. So I'm really excited to sort of pick your brain on how those sides are different, how they can work together more effectively. I think there's a lot of opportunity that has yet to be uncovered. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, I do want to have our listeners learn about you. Tell us about your career path, working your way up at Okie State, getting to Tech, moving to the university. Just tell us about your career path and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Oh, man. Okay. So going all the way back to Oklahoma State, it's funny because I started as a pre-med major for 2 years.
Wow.
So it took me a lot longer than you would think to be like, yeah, this is not what I want to do. And I was like walking out of the dorm I lived in one day and heard somebody say they're going to a class called Sports in the Media. And I was like, that's a class? That sounds insane to me. And so I immediately went and talked to my advisor, checked out broadcast journalism. I'd always loved sports growing up, like to an obsessive level, and met a couple people in the college. And it actually worked out to where a friend of mine was doing the public address for Oklahoma State soccer, and he had a game that he was going to miss. And he asked if I would fill in for him. And I'd never done anything like that in my life, but I was like, sure, like I'll do the public address for an OSU women's soccer game. That sounds awesome. And so while I was there, I was sitting next to Wade McWhorter, who was the SID for Oklahoma State soccer, and he's still doing baseball up there. And just during the game, I was just like picking his brain, like, so what is it that you do? Like, I had no idea about like media relations, sports information, anything like that. And he directed me to Kevin Clintworth, who was Oklahoma State's football SID at the time. Had an interview with Kevin, immediately like wanted to work in the office there as a student. So I did that, and I kept the PA thing going too. I did soccer and baseball up there at OSU, and that was just so much fun. And I loved working as a student at the office, eventually became a GA, and then got my first sport as an SID. So I was track and field and cross country.
Mhm.
Did a lot of stuff with football, men's basketball, women's basketball, did like the normal student thing from that time, which learning stat crew for everything and whatnot, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
almost pretty much useless now since they've completely changed like to the Genius format or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then from there, I was able to get my first. I got my first job out here at Tech as the volleyball and track SID.
Mhm.
And then just through just some shuffling around, I moved up to women's basketball the next year. And then from there, I kind of took on a secondary football role while being the women's basketball SID. And my strength had always just been in like the content side of it and the social
Mhm.
media side of it. At that time, we only had Texas Tech, like the Tech Athletics Twitter and Facebook pages, and then like a game day one where we did like all in-game updates for all sports, and you would
Okay.
like denote what sport you were talking about in the tweet.
Wait,
Which
so it was one game day updates account for every sport?
yes, yeah.
Wow,
So it
that's
was called
confusing.
Tech Game Day, yeah. And then you'd put like even for football, it'd be like FB colon, and then whatever was happening.
Wow.
And then so yeah, and that to me that like so my when I finished up at Oklahoma State, like I had been for my mass comm masters, I'd really been studying social media and how it was changing college athletics, which is kind of funny to think about now. But at that time, it's like we're really missing out on a lot here, and I kind of led a charge to create a bunch of different sport accounts at Tech, and then from there it just kind of devolved into like, hey, this is a position like the social media director position that's popping up other places. I think we could really do it. So I put together a presentation, pitched it to our external director, and everybody was on board. And that's how I moved into the social media director role. And
Super cool.
and it just kind of went crazy from there. Started working with our broadcast services team. I was like just doing whatever I could. I was teaching myself Photoshop, Premiere, everything just to crank out content.
Mhm.
Just, not like way back then, but like in 2015, 2016, there were only just a really handful of schools who were doing it really well and had like their content armies like up and running,
Yeah.
But that's where it started for us, and then it just kind of blew up from there. And then about a year and a half ago, I got this presented with this opportunity on campus, and I thought it was the right move. And so I came over here, and that's what I've been doing since.
Love it. So take me back to the days with the Pokes with Oklahoma State, and as you were coming up in the SID side, I guess like take me like what were your day-to-day responsibilities? Was it very much the traditional media game notes and setting up interviews and writing recaps, and like were you doing like, okay, if you're at the track and field meet, if you can take some photos, that'd be great for the website, or take some video, or like when did that content side start to trickle into the information side of the SID role, I guess?
Yeah, I really cut my teeth in the traditional SID roles, stat crew, game notes, InDesign, all that stuff. And where it really started, the content side of it is whenever I got my sport and I was doing track and field cross country. That's when it was like, hey, I'm going to a meet, or like, hey, so-and-so, like we had the number one mark in the country in this event. Like, oh, it'd be really cool if we like do something to commemorate this instead of just like a story on the web. And so that's when I really started like kind of getting into Photoshop, and I would work with our publishing director, and just there was a few of us on like the student staff that we were kind of like trying to teach each other what we knew about the various like Adobe Creative Suite. Because it's crazy, man. Like in college, I was journalism broadcasting. I was taught how to edit video on Final Cut Pro. And then I did a sports internship with the CBS affiliate in Tulsa, and we edited on Avid. And then I came into this, and it was all Adobe. So I feel like I've had to teach myself this multiple times. But that's where it really started, was going to meets. And then at Tech, like my year in track at Tech, that was when like it was discovered like Twitter allowed you to embed videos, and that was like a big deal. Or like before Periscope or Twitter Live was even a thing, Meerkat was the app that we were all playing around with, broadcasting and stuff. And then, Periscope obviously folded into Twitter from there, but that's where it starts like, oh man, we can deliver this stuff to people immediately.
Yeah.
And I feel like just that class of us all kind of learned as we went together on that stuff. So that's definitely where it started for me.
And do you feel like too, as you've evolved in your own roles and even just observing what's happened throughout the university you've been at and even throughout the industry, like it, and I talked about this with a recent guest as well. We had Mike Murtaugh on from Montana about this blurred line between, I guess, sports info and social and even marketing to some extent, external to some extent. Like it used to be much more siloed, I think, where you did your thing, you did your thing. And now when social came along, it was kind of this strategic comms, I guess you're seeing some people call it. So like when you were designing that role for yourself at Texas Tech and saying this is a role that we need, was it like, hey, this is something that SIDs are doing right now on their own time, or like how do you justify the value that brings in the midst of those kind of old school mindsets, I guess?
Well, it was kind of interesting because we had some SIDs that were doing a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had some that were focused on the more traditional side. And I thought a role like that could really level the playing field where, each sport was getting like, similar attention in that vein.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where it started. And what I really wanted to do is bridge the gap between the SID communications office and some of the other departments like broadcast services and some of those other areas. And like our photographers that we had on staff, just trying to like, what is now today, like creative services with like everybody under one umbrella, trying to move toward that. And what really sold it was, on their side was that I would be the liaison with like Learfield IMG from a sponsorship standpoint and stuff like that, helping with fulfillment on that side of things. And so it was kind of a perfect marriage of stuff that they were looking for and stuff that I was looking for. And it really worked out in that way.
How would you characterize like the moment when you guys started to try to be more cohesive? Like you talked about getting the departments to work together. But I know it's a common story that some people still struggle with at the school side of having all those accounts, all those team accounts speak the same language, ideally have the same formatting. So it's like, Tech MBB, Tech, Texas Tech, or whatever you want to call it, WBB. So like how has it been getting that cohesiveness? And also, I guess, how have you seen it on the university side as well?
So where it started for us, and I'll never forget it, it was April of 2016. And it was like spring football, and Patrick Mahomes was coming into his junior year. Mm-hmm. And it was just really easy to figure out that like, man, this dude is a human highlight reel. Like we just need to be out here showing the ridiculous things that he's doing at practice every day. And at the time, Coach Kingsbury had just posted a video of Pat making a couple of no-look throws at practice on his Twitter account.
Wow.
And I just went over into the football office and talked to the staff and worked on like getting our football account creators. Like we could be doing stuff like this all the time. And it was kind of a perfect marriage. Logan Hawk he was an intern on our staff, and he was so instrumental because he not only knew how to do photo, but he knew how to do video. And he was really passionate about doing that stuff. And then we had hired a couple people on the broadcast services side that they wanted to be out there and doing that stuff every day. Mm-hmm. And that's where it started. We were just like, hey, let's put out like 20 seconds of cool footage from like a spring practice. You know what I mean? And let's do that like a few times a week. And that's where it really started. And then other sports started seeing that. And that's when it was like, then everybody realized that there was like a growing need and demand for this. And other sports were going to want it. And so we needed to increase our manpower. We needed to increase our resources. Everybody realized very quickly that this is where it was going. And we're still trying to take that approach today. Like over here on the university side, in our communications and marketing department, we're in the middle of a pretty aggressive expansion, hiring a lot of people, trying to kind of achieve that same thing from a storytelling standpoint. You know what I mean? Getting ourselves the manpower and resources to constantly be able to, make alums, potential students aware of what's going on here, and always doing everything we can to, you can always be improving the perception, you know what I mean? And so that's what we're looking to do. And I see so many parallels every day to whenever we first started doing this in athletics to what I'm doing now. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, what's cool, and I'm sure you guys see it on all sides, is it's not a new story by any means, is how athletics does help to raise the university overall. It is the front porch of the university in many ways. And when when Pat Mahomes is making national news when he's there at Tech, the applications to the school are going to rise. The donations new donors are going to rise most likely, and it all certainly does fit together. And it's cool I'm sure it's cool to see that from all sides too. So like when you're on the athletic side and to juxtapose that along the university side, what are sort of the goals and KPIs? Like what do you when you're on the athletics? I guess there's a lot of different things where it's recruiting directly. It's perception of a given program. So like is it easier? Is it harder to look at that on the university side? Are you looking more at applications? You're looking at some sort of brand perception as well throughout the country. Like take me through what those, I guess, strategic conversations are like and how they may vary or are similar across the board.
I mean, this is cliche, but it's kind of walking a line between all of it. It's a pretty even mixture. I remember one of the things that we were really, really harping on when we started on the athletic side, when this position was created, brand perception was really important. We were always thinking ahead to, like the next chapter of college realignment and where do we fit in and how can we improve our perception between now and when that happens. And we figured by doing that, by setting our sights on that, a lot of the stuff would just kind of fall into place. At that time, there were still a lot of restrictions in place from a recruiting standpoint on what you could and what you couldn't do. It's obviously a lot different now with personalized videos and all that stuff. And that was another thing that we were one of the first ones on board with open doors at Tech, realizing like the power that was potentially there. And that was a thing that we just knew would help from a recruiting standpoint, like showing kids when they come onto campus, like, look, this is what we're doing for our athletes that are already here. Imagine what this operation will look like in 2 to 3 years for you. You know what I mean? And so that's what really started on the athletic side. On the university side, it's kind of the same.
Blake, real quick on the athletic side before we move on the university side, you mentioned a little bit of the realignment type aspects of and how that colored some of the conversations. So, like, was there almost a secondary goal? Yes, our main goal is to reach the recruits, the student athletes of tomorrow. But is there also like almost that B2B side, I guess, for lack of a better term, where we also want to be making sure that the presidents of schools and the SEC, for example, or whoever it may be, like see Texas Athletics as a university that's going to invest, that's going to have resources, that has the audience size, the fan size that is worth looking at from the business side, whether that is another conference or that is a potential corporate sponsor as well.
Yeah, it had a lot to do with that. And I'm sorry, I think you cut out just for a second there. I think I disconnected and came back on.
No
but what we were talking about was conference realignment and perception against like recruiting and stuff like that. But that was always a big part of the conversation, because if you weren't thinking ahead to stuff like that, I think you were behind. It was always going to be about showing, I mean, not 100%, but a big portion of it was like showing the good things that are happening here. You know what I mean? And really making sure what we wanted to do is, okay, when things are going well and we have a captive audience, we need to capitalize on that. And I think that all kind of came to a head at the 2019 Final Four and Tech's run through the NCAA tournament. I feel like everybody that was a part of that can look back at that and that we really capitalized on that. And as a result, like kind of what you were talking about earlier, applications went up, perception changed, all these different sort of things happened like that were really major positives for Texas Tech. And it started, 3-4 years ago with the vision to be like, okay, we need to have this set up in place for when something like this happens. That way we make sure that we are maximizing it 100%.
Yeah, I if anyone that knows me, I'm always looking out for that when schools have their big moments in the spotlight, especially if you're a school that doesn't get in the spotlight a lot. I mean, not that I would not put Texas Tech in that category, but like you are whatever, a Cinderella story. How ready are you as a school to maximize that time in the spotlight? And that goes for the entire university side. I think that's a great. I really want to talk about this, so let's go right into it.
Okay.
Of like. Texas Tech is obviously you've been there during some really good times, both on and off the field. I mean, certainly Pat Mahomes becoming the maybe the greatest quarterback ever, and the basketball team having some incredible runs in the tournament under Chris Beard and continuing to look good these days as well. So when you guys make a Final Four or you have a quarterback make big roads off the field or rather in the pros, what does that look like when you talk about maximizing the opportunity? What does that look like strategically? What does it look like tactically? And how have you guys made sure you are ready for the moment?
So where it really started for us was the previous year we made it to the Elite Eight, ended up losing to Villanova in Boston. And that Villanova team is still one of the best college basketball teams I think I've ever seen that knocked us out in 2018. But it was our first, we hadn't been in the tournament in a couple of years, and we had not had our like current department that we did at the time, where we had like multiple videographers, multiple photographers, stuff like that, all working as a cohesive unit. And that was our first like brush up with the NCAA tournament video policies, where, where it's like, you can't do this and you can't use on-court footage for this or that or whatever. So the following year, we were really prepared. We had been working to really beef up our photography side of things. And we had just some super talented students come through. I mean, at the time, I think like Derek Spencer is a photographer for the Arizona Cardinals. Evan Triplett is doing it for the Houston Astros. Elise Bressler is like running the department there now. Elizabeth Hertel. I'm thinking just like there were so many really talented people that we had there at the time. And so we just leaned into that. We knew that we could provide really, really high level photo content. And I think that's part of it, right? Like you have to adjust to what you know that you can do well. I think that's like rule number one, pretty much. And we knew that we could take cameras with us wherever, and we weren't going to have any restrictions about what we could post. And we got really creative, whether it was like slideshow, like stop action, like it's almost like a video, but it's a series of photos. We did everything we could with our photo arm to really show off what was happening. Cause that's what we just wanted to give a window to our fans that weren't there and hadn't experienced anything like this. It was Tech's first trip to the Final Four, and we just really wanted to make sure that we maximized it. So we made a very conscious effort with our photography content, and it showed out. I mean, we ended up like for the tournament number one in total engagements, and we were like 16th in followers out of the tournament teams. Yeah. And so that was, I mean, the proof was in the pudding. And for us, it was just a way to show our administration that like, hey, you gave us these resources and look at what we were able to do with it. Like, let's keep this thing going.
Yeah. So then the next time around, do you guys almost have like a checklist, a plan in place, or like, hey, let's do what we did last time, but a little bit better? Like, what does it look like when you guys make the next run?
Yeah, I mean, so, and just like to go back, because I think it's hard to do that without kind of going back to 2019 and like thinking about what we actually did and the plans we had in place. But I've just always been really hands off. I just think that, the best work is done when you just like let really talented people do what they're good at.
Yeah.
And you just stay out of their way. And so we had like pretty like loose structure set up. It's like, hey, if, things are going well, let's make sure we're capturing this. In the event that looks like we're going to win, let's make sure that, you're over here and you're over here capturing this. We just want to make sure that we're not missing a single thing. This person's going to the locker room to capture this. We just wanted to make didn't want to tell people what to do, but just put them in the situation to succeed. And I think that's where we like really did well. And we had to turn right around 2 months later for I think it was our fourth trip to the College World Series in Omaha, and Tech was one of the top seeds there. And we prepared the same way. It was like, let's go after this, like we're going to win the national championship. And that was the thing too, is like, talking to the baseball staff and being like, hey, this is kind of how we've attacked it before. Do you guys care if we kind of almost come in with this air of, hey, we're here to win it this time? And I think that's important too, like the relationships you have with staff and the buy-in to make sure that the voice that you're trying to portray aligns with the voice that your staff is trying to portray. That was a very big deal for us too. We wanted to like, it's easy to like fire off a meme or, be joking around all the time, but we wanted to make sure that, because when our football program is coached by Cliff Kingsbury, we're going to have like a different tone and feel than a basketball team that's coached by Chris Beard,
Right.
where there's like a lot more like grit, toughness, stuff like that. And then the baseball team under Tim Tadlock kind of felt the same way too. There was a lot of like everyman, blue collar working mentality. Not that the football team didn't have that hardworking mentality, but you got like the high flying offense and the lots of points and stuff like that. That is where we just really tried to make sure that our tone and voice was matching what people saw on the field or on the court.
Yeah, it's really interesting, really well put. And then like how do you marry that, or do you even need to, with the overall athletics brand for Texas Tech athletics, for Red Raiders, for hashtag Recom? Is it really, when you're focusing on an individual team, are you telling that team's story first and foremost, and what reflects that coach and his culture or her culture, or is there still some element of this is who we are as Texas Tech? As opposed to this is who Texas Tech football is, and again, it may not supposed to marry by design.
I think it can at times. I think a lot of the times we were telling specific stories, whether it was athletes or teams, stuff like that. But then you have periods of athletics department success that you really like have to capitalize on, and that's where we talk about like brand perception and stuff like that. We one of the things that we really did was, I think it was 2018 where we had 5 different programs that made it to like the final 8, if you will, of their perspective, like NCAA postseason. And that was the moment where it's like, this is what we do here at Texas Tech. Like we are visible at the end of the postseason. We are winning, like we're doing it the right way. That was the moment where we kind of like married it across the board, where it's like, yeah, each sport, they have like these little like intricacies and little differences in feel, but overall, this is who we are as an athletics department. And those are the moments that we would take the opportunity to marry those two things. Yeah.
That's really well put. I love that. That's fantastic. And so when these great moments are happening, or when they're about to happen, how much interdepartmental conversations are happening? I guess, like, is there a time when everyone, social, sports info, marketing, external, broadcast, or pick another department, whatever, within athletics, you're all in the same room saying, hey, here's what we're going to be doing, how can we make this better together? Like, is it really like every department kind of knows their marching orders and knows what their goals are, or is there opportunity to collaborate, or is there almost too many cooks in the kitchen at that point?
I think we did a really good job of striking a balance, and it started like I am really thankful during my time at Tech and on the athletic side. I think I was really trusted. I was really given a long leash to make the right decisions. But on the other side of it, we also did a really good job of making sure that we had the correct, I don't know, you call it like stakeholders, if you will, from each department meeting, like pretty regularly, but also like when necessary outside of like the normal regular meeting structure, to make sure that we were aligned on goals. We had one in 2019 where we had a meeting and we just randomly thought of the idea of like, what if we did a This Is Sports Center commercial, and we like typed like parody thing. We really like talked about like our defense, and that we started spitballing ideas for it. And it turned into this really viral video that like, it got a lot of life. I mean, we posted it in February, like millions and millions of views and engagement, stuff that we had never gotten on that account before. And it was still like playing, like, I think during the Final Four game against Michigan State on the CBS broadcast, like they like showed it. And that was when I was like, oh my gosh, like the reach of that is just tremendous, but there was just such a really good balance struck. And the people that were like representing each department in those meetings, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, they all worked together really well and had an idea of what the others were trying to achieve. And I think that was what was so important. We never really felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen. People understood like what their purpose was, what they were going for. And it was just a really open type scenario where it's like, any suggestion is welcome. Like, let's throw stuff against the wall and then let's mold it from there. That's kind of how we approached it.
Yeah, having more heads in the room, that it can be super helpful at times. To be able to get all those best ideas and to find opportunities to have those synergies as well. And now that you're on the your side, let's say that we're talking this time next year, and whatever, or maybe slightly before this time next year, and Texas Tech is about to play in the Big 12 title game, or you guys are looking like you're going to make another run in basketball, and now you're on the other side. Like, what would you want to happen? What, looking back on the times when Tech did make the Final Four run, what was happening on the university side, and like take me through now as you're in your current position as director of social emerging strategy for the university, Texas Tech University, of what you guys could be doing to really maximize that on all the university's channels.
So I think it's about leveraging without overstepping your bounds. I think one area where we've kind of done that is Texas Tech University has partnered with the Kansas City Chiefs, has entered like into a corporate partnership. And part of that has been like at kickoffs of Chiefs games at Arrowhead, like there's an ad on the video board that says kick off your career with Texas Tech. And so there's like a couple different activations going on there and have been going on all season. And it's a multi-year deal to continue to happen. But one thing that we've done is activated that on social as well. So we've had like paid social campaigns all season running on that and the way we've designed it is, where the Chiefs are playing or who they're playing, hitting those markets that are going to be getting the game on social with, hey, the Kansas City Chiefs know best. Kick off your career at Texas Tech with like a targeted link for admissions for prospective students, hitting prospective students, their parents. I think that is kind of like those kind of activations help spread awareness on a national level, improve perception. That's kind of one example that we've been really attacking in that area, is just kind of leveraging while, kind of staying in your own lane.
So if I am super excited because I just saw Texas Tech, win a regional final to clinch a spot in the Final Four, and I am a prospective student or whatever it may be, and I Google Texas Tech and I end up on, Texas Tech University's website, at that point, like, what's the ideal experience for that prospective student or whoever it might be? Like, do you want them to get information right away about, hey, look what just happened on our athletic side? We know you're excited, or do you should the first thing I see still be more about, we know why you're here. We can tell you more about what it's like going to Texas Tech University, what the opportunities are. Like, what's the ideal, user story for someone that is all of a sudden Googling Texas Tech because they're seeing you on CBS?
I think that's a really good question. I think it's another example of striking a balance. I mean, I don't think you need to inundate someone with the reason that they visited your site when you know why they visited your site. But at the same time, there has to be that acknowledgement. We talk about creating like a journey type experience where we, in whatever form or fashion, whether it's with a targeted ad or something, we've gotten somebody to apply at Texas Tech. From that point on, it's continuing to retarget that person as they arrive in school, tell their story while they're here, watch them grow, watch them graduate, watch them become an ambassador, continue to tell that story. We are focused on that journey and continuing to be a part of it. So I think that's kind of the user story, is like, it's not about just getting you to our page to apply to our school. What are we doing from there? Like, how do we turn somebody from a prospective student into like a Red Raider for life? You know what I mean? So that's kind of the approach that we take to it.
No, that's really cool to think that it really is a number of touch points, and it's a never ending user journey from the day they first think about going to college to the day they hopefully continue to donate into their 50th year reunion going back to college. It's a full life cycle.
Exactly.
And so there's a couple minutes left here with Blake Zimmerman, Director of Social Emerging Strategy with Texas Tech University. I'm already just loving this. We can keep going for hours. You talked about working with Open Doors on the athletic side and really understanding how valuable your student athletes could be. One, of course, to help them build their brands, and now in the age of NIL, they're able to monetize those brands more effectively. But also to help tell the Texas Tech story through their eyes, helping recruits see what it's like to be a student athlete at Texas Tech. So taking that to that mindset, that opportunity, what does it look like on the university side? Like what? I'm not saying there's an Open Doors for the university, but like, how can you find those students who are already potential quote unquote influencers or content creators, or elevating student stories and facilitating them to tell those stories, like, hey, you are doing really well in this let's work together. We see that you're about to, win a prize, whatever it might be. But what does it look like on the university side to really help the students tell those stories, similar to how we look at it so much on the athletic side?
I think there's a lot of opportunities for something really similar, and why wouldn't there be? You have a much larger pot to pick from too, 40,000 students. There's got to be stories out there. There's got to be influencers like that. One area that we've looked at too is high level administration on campus. Like, does this piece of content work better coming from Texas Tech's account, or does it work better coming from the university president's account? These are all things that like we've kind of taken like that athletics approach to that open doors approach to, like, hey, obviously like we want like a lot of good content coming from our platforms, but are we really maximizing the available like plethora that we potentially have? You know what I mean? And that's an area that we talk about a lot. Like I said, we're still building out our team and trying to add manpower and resources, but that's definitely a place we want to get to, where we are identifying influencers and partnering with them and doing everything we can to enhance both our brand and theirs through sharing the Texas Tech experience.
Yeah, no, it's something we say here where I work is we always talk about like activating your ecosystem, and on the when you're a university, your ecosystem is so vast and extensive and goes well beyond the confines of the campus as well to all the alums you guys have at your disposal. So it's like I say, we're just barely scratching the surface of what that full maturity looks like to activate in that space.
Exactly. It's pretty exciting.
One last thing before you get to the shareable stat, I promise we will get there in a moment. I'm taking advantage of every minute I have with you, Blake. What does the university side look like when it comes to social in general? Like, are there accounts for every academic department, and are there things that people are running themselves, or is everything going through a more central communications hub? Like, what's that balance look like, and how do you guys keep track of it all?
So ideally where we want to get, and we're not there yet. When we got in, it was a bunch of different accounts kind of doing their own thing. One of the things, and most of them do, most colleges and units and departments have their own social media accounts. Some of them have communications professionals operating them, some do not. I think what we have been trying to do is, for a good first step, is, creating guidelines and policies, making sure that they're all aware of them. And then trying to enforce brand standards, whether that's, because we work whether it's brand folder, like getting logos, correct colors, correct templates and stuff in the right hands, making sure that we are creating a more cohesive look, even if our strategy isn't super centralized. I think that's a really good first step to take.
Yeah, I think we all saw that and continue to see that on the athletic side. And now it's taking that same mindset, to your point, to the university side, and making sure that at the very least we all look the same. And you can tell this is a Texas Tech account, an official Texas Tech account.
Exactly.
All right, Blake, we're gonna have some more fun in our Blake Bite segment. First episode's shareable stat coming right up. Just awesome stuff learning from Blake Zimmerman, Director of Social and Emerging Strategy for Texas Tech University. Go Red Raiders. Just really learned a lot from him. He brings a great bit of insight coming from athletics, being on the university side, and being there entrenched in Lubbock at Texas Tech. Just doing awesome stuff there. And we're going to have some more fun, though, in our Blake Bites segment, so stick around for that. You're going to learn more. You're going to have some fun. You're going to learn about the food in Lubbock and Stillwater. And you're going to learn about Texas Tech's famous meat judging team, which has won a ton of national titles. So if that doesn't get you stick around, I don't know what will. But before we get to our Blake Bites, we have this episode's shareable stat. This episode's shareable stat looks at the website traffic as well as social media impressions, but we're looking at the website traffic for college athletics programs between 2021 compared to 2019. 2020 being thrown out for the pandemic, of course, and the craziness there. But if you look at 2019 compared to 2021, there is around a 20% increase in the number of page views for athletics websites, according to a recent study put out by Fanbase, which is Learfield's data analytics arm that they have internally there. Around a 20% increase in page views. There's also an increase in impressions on the athletics social media accounts as well. But if you look at September 2019 and September 21 in particular, that's where the effect is most pronounced. Again, that 20% increase in page views. What could that mean? Well, it could mean a lot of fans maybe coming on the site to get information about tickets, about COVID policies at games. It could just be renewed excitement for football programs, some of which did not have a season last year, but most of them did. But most had a limited season. There is excitement, of course, with most teams are welcoming back fans for the first time in a while. But of course, there was full attendance in 2019 as well. So it may just be fans, like we said, looking for information. But the point is that websites, are not here to die. There are a lot of older fans in the college space that may have been, they didn't share the demographics. Right? I did not record the demographics of the visitors that were part of that 20% increase. But it really gets you thinking around the importance of first-party data, the importance of getting fans when they are on your owned and operated platforms like your website, like your app. How can you capture their information? How can you give them something, give them a reason to become a first-party fan or even a zero-party data fan as well when they're on your owned and operated platforms? Does that mean that if a fan is not signed in on your website, do you incentivize them with a free item or some kind of content behind a not paywall, but a registration wall, so you can get their information and be able to personalize the experience for them? Yes, and be able to understand who they are and capture that fan who came to your website because they clearly are a fan. And yes, we still have social media, very important, and it's going to refer a lot of traffic as well. But when a fan lands on your website and you don't know who they are, that's an opportunity, and it's only getting more and more valuable in this first-party data era that we are in, and it is not going away anytime too soon. And how can you really establish that relationship, really put a ring on it, so to speak, and invite them onto your platform as themselves? So you're going to just think about it. Think about what if a fan comes to your site, how can you make sure to greet them with some reason, some compelling reason to personalize the experience for them or tell you who they are. So again, free item, content, anything you can do to really capture that fan when they come to your site. So that's just a shareable stat. I know I went on and on about it, so thanks for sticking around. That 20% increase in page views for college athletics websites, looking at 2021 compared back to 2019. Super interesting stuff. You can check out that full study by Fanbase, the Learfield Data Analytics arm. It's free to download. Just Google it. You'll find it, or I tweet it as well. But awesome stat. But more importantly, stick around because you're going to really learn a lot more and have some fun in our Blake Bites segment. Right back from this episode's shareable stat, and I am joined on the line still by Blake Zimmerman. He is the Director of Social and Emerging Strategy for Texas Tech University. Are you now ready for some Blake Bites, Blake?
I'm ready. Let's get it.
Love of my alliteration and my clever names, so we're hope that these questions will be fun. They will be. Number one, I'm excited to hear this one. Tell me your favorite piece you wrote or worked on during your time at Oklahoma State.
Oh, man, that is a tough one. Okay, we had, whenever I was doing track and field and cross country, we had a girl win the 1,500 meter outdoor national. Yeah, the 1,500 meter outdoor national championship. And she was like in 7th with 100 meters to go. And somehow just had a major kick and won it. And I ended up in the following days writing a feature on her, complete with and at the time, this is crazy. We were able to embed the YouTube video from the race, which in 2013 was unheard of, doing that on your website. But yeah, that from my time at Oklahoma State, that was probably my favorite piece that I worked on.
No, I love that. And I can totally feel like a couple of years before that, I was back in my undergrad in school doing the earliest of early YouTube highlights as well. And so it's super cool. The video was like, holy crap, you have a video on your website of that event? That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely. We've come a long way. We'll just say that.
Just a little bit. Number two, this is, you can take this wherever direction you like. I want to get your thoughts on what does the future of the SID look like? Is SID still going to be there? Is there still going to be a need for the good old media notes and keep doing stat crew, or is it really going to become this truly content creator role, and your role is more to give the most exciting portrayal of what's going on as opposed to worrying about the details of all the information? So where do you see SIDs going in the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years here?
I really think it depends. I think it depends on where you are. My initial idea, whenever I pitched my position at in the athletic department, was that we would have content creators slash social media people like they were SIDs, like people that were responsible for each sport. You know what I mean? That was where I thought it was going, but I think there has to be a buy-in from the athletic department. I mean, that's a really large, amount of resources and manpower. So I think for the places that aren't doing that, there's going to have to be some kind of give and take. You see places that are kind of like their media guides are kind of going by the wayside, because that's one thing like about a media guide, especially when you print them, the second that you tip off or kick off your season, it's obsolete.
Right.
So I think people are adjusting to that. I think notes like are really important for, TV, radio, print media, but I think they can be condensed. And I think that's going to be one area where you might see that, where, hey, part of my role is I need to make sure I'm going and getting photos of practice. So maybe I will get rid of these 3 or 4 pages of notes that I would usually update, but are pretty obscure facts. You know what I mean? I think you're going to kind of see that give and take. I think that's where it's going.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, I can certainly remember the days when these enormous, like, encyclopedia-sized media guides were sitting all over the table, and we're like, well, we only a couple people took them at the game. We still have like 15 left over. Like, what are we going to do with these? And it's a lot of paper for sure.
Yeah, that it is.
Number 3, this should be interesting for you, Blake. So you spent time working and living and going to school in Stillwater. You spent time and are still working in Lubbock. So 2 definitely small college towns. Tell me, like, what's it like? What was it like living in both those towns or those cities? And what sort of like the compare and contrast between Lubbock and Stillwater?
So Lubbock and Stillwater as towns themselves, I would say they're pretty different. Stillwater, one of the things I really liked about Stillwater was the proximity to Tulsa and Oklahoma City. So one thing I did while I was at Oklahoma State is on the side, I would drive down to Oklahoma City for Thunder game days, and I would do stats for like visiting radio crews and TV crews.
Oh, cool.
And that's how I would make cash on the side. And that was a really fun gig because that was while Westbrook, Harden, and Durant were all there. I got to see some really cool stuff doing that. That was probably my favorite thing about Stillwater. I mean, I loved like the small college town atmosphere. I wouldn't trade my college days for anything there. I'm not so sure I would live there as an adult just because it's so centralized around the collegiate experience. Whereas Lubbock, you have about 300,000 people. I've had a wonderful time raising my family here. Mm-hmm. It's not that like Texas Tech is the only show in town from that standpoint. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think that's that's what I would say the difference is. Like, I feel more comfortable living in Lubbock post college than I would in Stillwater. That'd be the main difference.
That's really well done, because I had no idea if that question even made sense, and you definitely I had no idea that Lubbock was that big, to be honest. So you've taught me a little bit today.
Hey, that's just increasing that brand perception, right?
Hell yeah. We will talk about the meat judging team as well at some point.
Yeah. What a dynasty.
I need to insert a question about that, actually. So we'll squeeze something like that in somehow, because it is one of the more cooler stories in greater athletics, I guess you could say. All right, number 4. Let's look on the sports social side. Tell me the pro sports team whose social media you admire and why.
Oh my gosh. There's quite a few, but one, and I'm biased, but I'm a Chelsea fan, and I think specifically their graphic design is amazing. Like their game day graphics, like their one-off things that they do for their athletes is just really outstanding. I think they're kind of handicapped because, like, I don't know if it's like an agreement with NBC that they can't share in-game highlights or stuff like that, but the design work that they do is just like, it's very admirable. And I'm biased. I just thought of one of the teams I'm a fan of. So
I definitely agree there. I'm not a Chelsea fan, but I do follow their USA accounts. Just I'm interested in the way they activate overseas, and I see a lot of that creative, and it's really awesome. So I will agree with you there. All right. Number 5. This is an interesting one. So I'll see what you have to say. Tell me the sort of VIP or VIP metric, the one major KPI that you pay close attention to in your current role and also in your former role. Like, is there I'm sure it's not a single metric that's the only one you ever care about, but what's the one that you point to or tend to look at most often?
Oh my gosh, it changes depending on what's going on. Obviously, if it's like we're doing an activation where we're trying to get people to apply, it's link clicks for that particular thing. But as far as just I don't
Yeah.
know, I'm a Twitter guy, and I really look at retweets, likes, stuff like that. But more than that, like the interaction rate. I think sometimes we can kind of get into a situation, and we ran into this when I was on the athletic side at Tech, where it's like, why aren't we ranked higher on this School Sparks list or whatever? And I think School Sparks has done a good job of adjusting to this, where it's not just the same teams that have millions and millions of followers that are pumping out content to those millions of followers and getting however many hundreds of thousands of interactions, but the rate, per capita compared to how many followers you have. I think that's something that's really important. I like to look at an interaction to tweet ratio or
Yeah.
interaction to post ratio, kind of like a quality over quantity. That's something that's always really interested me. Can you, not just like clog people's timelines all the time and, manage to still stay in front of them and stay relevant.
Yeah, no, totally. If you're only looking for that highest number, you can game the system, so to speak. If you need more impressions, you just tweet 10 more times, no matter what the quality is.
Exactly.
It's, I can totally feel you there. All right, next up for you, Blake. I told you we would squeeze in this question, so I'm excited. I have to hear about it. Just tell our listeners about the dynasty that is the Texas Tech meat judging team, and I guess just tell me too and our listeners the story behind like that team's dynasty, why and how it's become, just really the wherever you want to call it, the Alabama of meat judging.
Yeah. So it's truly unreal and something that I did not know about until I got here. But back in November, Tech won its third consecutive meat judging national championship, and it was their 8th since 2010, which is just like, if that was a run that was happening in any major sport, it would just be absolutely unreal. To be honest, like, I don't know the ins and outs of what actually goes into a meat judging competition confidently enough to talk about it on here with you. I just know that they are not to be messed with. They are outstanding.
So are there meat judging student athletes or wherever you want to call it, that are they recruited? Is it work similarly to like a quote unquote like normal sport, or is it more like a club? And I'm so curious about this. We could do a whole hour on the meat judging team.
Yeah, and so technically they're within the College of Ag Sciences here.
Okay.
So I'm sure there's a good mixture of coming here to do that, knowing the pedigree of the program, while also like the normalcy of a student at the same time. I think there's
Yeah.
a good balance there. But again, that's another thing that I'm not totally sure on.
Now I'm just like wondering too, like what's the vegan analog to meat judging, I guess.
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I do know that there were individual winners. There's first team and second team All-American. So maybe it's a lot closer to like the normal college sports that we consume than we think.
Super interesting. All right, number 7 or number. I'm losing track what number on, but this I want to hear this one. And you can't say this past weekend, because I know we're to not to date this podcast, but Blake was recently at the crazy cool Big 12 title game between Oklahoma State and Baylor, and didn't go Oklahoma State's way, but still one of the best games I've ever seen. So tell me, besides that game, the most memorable game you've ever attended, whether for work or as a fan.
Oh my gosh. That's so that's a really tough one. I feel like I've seen a lot of wild stuff during my time in Texas Tech athletics, just the years that Patrick Mahomes is quarterback for the football team, not to mention everything else. Obviously the 2019 national championship against Virginia.
Yep.
I mean, we were 12 seconds away from a national title. That was something that I'll never forget. Any game in that run, really. The NCAA tournament was always my favorite thing growing up. And so the fact that I've got to work it multiple times and I've seen what now, like 8 or 9 wins for my team, like that's something that I'll always take with me. But there's so many, man, so many of the games that like that, Pat was quarterback here for, that were like 55, 52 type games, just like wild back and forth, crazy stuff. For sure, the game that everybody always talks about, 2016, that's probably it. The 2016 Oklahoma Texas Tech football game where it was Baker against Mahomes.
Oh, yeah.
And it was 66-59. I think we spent the entire fourth quarter, like kind of watching the game, kind of looking up NCAA records to see what was the new one we broke in the last 10 seconds. The thing that I'll never forget about that game is both teams finished with 834 yards of offense.
Jeez, that's insane. Some teams don't get that much offense in like 4 or 5 games, let alone one game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. Yeah, you've had a pretty nice time there, being able to see a lot of great games, and hopefully more to come.
Hopefully, yes.
All right, it's time for our food question, coming down to the end here. So tell me, if I go and hang out with you there in Lubbock, what is the best meal to get, and where do we get it? And also, same question for Stillwater.
Okay, so for here, there's a lot of really good steak places. It's kind of one of the main things we're known for out here. There's any variety of places where we can just get a really good ribeye. That would be one of the meals. Barbecue as well. There's a place called it's called E.B. Mays. Just outside Lubbock, technically in Wolforth, which is like actually the suburb that I live in. But it was just ranked number 8 in Texas Monthly's best barbecue places in the state of Texas.
Ooh, and that's a competitive ranking too.
Yes, and it's an outstanding spot. So that would be a place that we'd have to go to for sure. Stillwater, I mean, I feel like it's cliche, and I feel like I probably didn't go as much as I should have when I was a student. But you got to get some cheese fries from Eskimo Joe's. I mean, that's a must if you're in Stillwater. I can't remember who it was that they were in Stillwater for Bedlam. Had posted something on Instagram like, had to get the sweet pepper bacon cheese fries. Oh, I think it was Max Olson from The Athletic. Yeah, he posted that, and I was immediately so jealous when I saw that. We definitely have to go to Eskimo Joe's if we're in Stillwater.
I love it. That's the best kind of greasy college town food that you need after a late night of partying or studying.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely studying. Yes.
All right, last 2 quick ones here. Number 9, tell me the social network that you think higher ed should be paying more attention to in 2022. Is there a social network or a social network feature, even if you want to get granular, that you feel like the higher ed social folks should be paying closer attention to next year?
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but it's TikTok. It always just, it's where your students and your potential students are, right? And that's where they are. And there's a lot of fertile ground for higher ed to be doing stuff. We have been experimenting with our TikTok on the university side, and there's so many different uses and so many different things you can cover. There's always something going on campus that you can do like a quick video for or something like that. Or there's always some kind of trend you can jump on. That I think that's the easy answer from a higher ed standpoint.
Yeah, and I've personally seen some really good stuff from universities on TikTok where you really get a feel for what it's like on campus. You can get like a tour of campus in 30 seconds or whatever, or you get a day in the life of a student or a student athlete, and there's some really good stuff on there. So I look forward to seeing more of it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, we did one that was at the pool at our rec center in the middle of the summer, and all the comments were like, "Whoa, I didn't know Tech had this. I want to come to Tech." And I was like, "There we go."
That's like, yeah, I'm sure there's nothing better to see than that kind of stuff when for you guys and in your role.
Exactly.
All right, last one for you, Blake. This might be the toughest question I'm going to ask on the whole podcast. Number 10, tell me who is on the Mount Rushmore of Texas Tech athletics.
Oh man,
the Mount Rushmore. That's 4 names that are carved in stone that represent the luminaries of the Red Raiders.
Oh man, if any like Texas Tech fans that are older than me will listen to this, I'll get in so much trouble. I'm sure I'll forget somebody. I would say that like this answer will be a lot more like for sure in the next 10 years, but I think Mahomes has to be on there.
Yeah.
I would go Cheryl Swoops.
Definitely a good one.
Would definitely be on there. And I would like, oh man, this is so tough. Like, is it like I can only do each sport once?
There's no rule. These are your rules only.
Okay. I mean, this is my personal, so like Andre Emmett, he was like the Big 12's all-time leading scorer when he was here. I was in middle school at the time, like idolized him. I just thought that like, even though like he probably didn't like his career in the NBA, like wasn't, like he didn't end up being like the world's biggest superstar. Like I just always thought that even then, like he was just like one of the most like pure scorers I had ever seen. Andre Emmett would be up there. And then for a fourth, um, oh my gosh, this is really difficult.
I'm trying to think of like other coaches or other athletes, and I don't know some of I don't know outside of football and men's basketball really myself, but
yeah, I would say as of right now, Tim Tadlock, the baseball coach, he's an alum and he's taken Tech to the College World Series like 4 times in the past decade. He would have to definitely be up there, and because that's just going to continue going here. The baseball program will. So
very
I
nice.
think I'm pretty comfortable with those 4.
We got ourselves a solid Mount Rushmore with Patrick Mahomes, Andre Emmett, Tim Talone. And who was the fourth one? Oh, Cheryl Swoops.
Yeah, Cheryl Swoops and Tim Tadlock. Yeah,
Tadlock, that's it. I love it. All right, we'll start carving it now.
Yes, wonderful.
Blake, you dominated those Blake bites. Now it's your chance to take over the podcast for me and tell us your social media all-star followers. Tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're following.
Oh man, this is a great question. I'm going to have to go with Courtney Bay. She's in her first season as director of men's basketball branding for Illinois. She came from Oklahoma State. We started together in the student office there, and just to see the content creator and social media specialist that she has become is just amazing. The way that she has taught herself graphics, video, she absolutely does it all. She's one of those people that you have her on staff and then she leaves. You're like, oh my gosh, we have to hire 3 different people to replace her. She always is just stunning me with whatever new thing she's doing. And I know they got a big win last night at Iowa, and I was just kind of looking through some of the stuff that she had done from that game earlier today. So yeah, that's an easy pick for me.
Very nice. Also, to keep a closer eye on the Illini, and with the team they have, they should be in the picture for all through March and maybe into April.
Oh, for sure.
And how about you, Blake? Where can we find you, as well as all things Texas Tech University on digital and social?
Yeah, pretty much across the board, we are at Texas Tech, Twitter, Instagram. Our TikTok is at Texas Tech UNIV. Still working on getting that verified, but hopefully we'll get there at some point. For me, pretty much across the board, Blake Z 1908. The 1908 was a reference to, I think it started. I'm a huge Cubs fan. That's where it started. And I know it seems like self-deprecating to put 1908 in your handle, but it was like a thing where I was like, I'm going to do it. And then they're going to win the World Series. I can change it. And then they won the World Series and then I didn't want to change it. So I just kept it.
Hey, I like it. And I, as a baseball history nerd, I could have told you 1908 without any Googling. So
yes, exactly.
Mad respect. Well, Blake, cannot thank you enough for coming on the show today. Really appreciate you lending your knowledge, your time. It's just really cool to get your perspective, and it sounds like there's some great things happening there at Texas Tech, and we look forward to continuing to follow along.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. This was as great of a time as I thought it would be, so I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Can't thank Blake enough for coming on the podcast today. Blake Zimmerman, Director of Social and Emerging Strategy for Texas Tech University. Just a ton of knowledge and really thoughtful responses. Really appreciate his ability to articulate some tough questions. And awesome hearing, of course, about how he was part of the run for Texas Tech with their men's basketball tournament runs in recent years. And, of course, being there for all the excitement of Patrick Mahomes. He's really been there in Lubbock not that long yet, but his years that he's been there has really been pretty exciting, and he's still young in his career and really going to bring a lot of great insight, a lot of value, a lot of good perspective as he went from athletics to the university side. And again, cannot thank Blake enough for giving us some of the time and information and knowledge and wisdom today. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, you can follow along with the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Go ahead and subscribe. You can also follow me, your host, Neil Horowitz, on Twitter at NJH287, or find me on LinkedIn, where I post more content, and the website, dsmsports.net. Check it out, more episodes and content. And until next time, this is Neil Horowitz saying goodbye. This is the last episode of 2021. We'll be back in 2022 with new episodes. We may also take a break and give you a little best of as well. It's been a little while since those. So look out in the feed or check out the podcast. Follow me on social. You'll get all the information. And don't worry, as you're traveling or relaxing or doing whatever you're doing over the holidays, you can get your fix of the geeking out that we do in social media and sports on this podcast. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz saying Happy New Year off of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.